Hello everyone, so in this video I'm going to be going over some information that I will need you guys to record into your notes. I will pause, so please make sure that when I pause that you also pause the video so you have time to record the information down. And then make sure that you hit play so that you can see the end of the video. Alright, so here we go. We're going to start off with let's start off with our big essential question, which is what is the difference between temperature, thermal energy, and heat? So we're going to start first with temperature and then talk even more in depth about thermal energy and heat, which we talked about in the introduction video. So temperature tells us how hot or cold something is. The scientific definition that you'll want to make sure you get into your notes is that it is the average kinetic energy of all the particles in an object. And we measure temperature in either Fahrenheit, which you'll probably hear if you ever listen to the weather, Celsius, which is used in many other countries except for the US, or Kelvin, which scientists typically tend to use. To measure temperature, we have to use something called a thermometer, which looks a little bit like this. So I'll go ahead and pause and make sure that you pause too to get this information down into your notes. All right, so next up we have thermal energy. So thermal energy is the total energy of all the particles in an object. I'll pause here before I continue so that way you can get this definition down into your notes. So to explain just a little bit more about thermal energy and how it relates to the total energy of all the particles in an object. So if an object has more particles at a certain temperature, so if there are two objects and they're both at the same temperature, the one with more particles has more thermal energy. Like with this example here of these two pies, they're both at the same temperature, but the complete pie is the one that has more thermal energy. If two objects have the same amount of particles, then the one with the higher temperature has more thermal energy. So here we have two full pies. The one that's at the higher temperature, 200 degrees Celsius, is the one with more thermal energy. And then finally, what exactly is heat? Heat is the transfer of thermal energy from a warmer object to a cooler object. That's always how heat flows. So this means that the warmer object is going to cool as the cooler object warms until they're at the same temperature or until they've reached thermal equilibrium, then heat stops transferring. This is measured in joules. So I do just kind of want to stop here and just talk a little bit about these three terms. We sometimes tend to use them interchangeably, especially heat and thermal energy, but they are very distinct, right? Heat is the transfer of thermal energy. Thermal energy is the total energy of all the particles. And temperature is just the measurement of the average of the kinetic energy of the particles. All right, so it can probably take a little bit of practice just trying to get those three terms straight. So now we're going to continue on into forms of heat transfer, because heat can transfer in many different forms. Sorry about that.